What if you met the evil version of yourself face to face? Well, of course, that's impossible, because you are the evil version of yourself. Today, my friends, we are going to analyze one of the most well-known and least read books in human history, the legendary one and only The Picture of Dorian Gray. I'm Johnny Lighthouse, this is the Johnny Lighthouse Show. Before anything else, we need to first understand what is the core idea of this book. Of course, this will contain some spoilers, but I hope that this story is so well known that you won't find any surprises. And also, I encourage everyone to read this book, of course, because you'll definitely learn something from it. The story follows Dorian Gray, a young Englishman of extraordinary beauty and charisma, who is completely oblivious about his effects on others, until the day in which a friend paints him in a portrait, and he instantly falls in love with himself as soon as he sees his own picture. That is the moment in which he makes a weird, mysterious wish, in which he wishes that his beauty may remain untainted in himself, and instead of him, the picture may decay as time passes, showing signs of becoming old. For some mysterious reason, his wish is granted, almost as if he had made a pact with the devil, as other people have done in literature, like, for example, Faust. The story echoes the myth of Narcissus, this demigod of Greek mythology, known for his extraordinary beauty, who wandered the lands of Mount Olympus, making everyone falling in love with him at first sight, though his heart was cold as ice. He was then ultimately punished because of his indifference by seeing himself reflected in a pond. Upon seeing himself, he doesn't even recognize himself, but falls in love with his image, and this causes him to ultimately decay and die. The myth of Narcissus is so important and relevant from a psychological and cultural point of view that it is indeed the reason for why we call narcissism the way we do. The very word of narcissism comes from the name of Narcissus. The story of Narcissus, and most importantly of Dorian Gray, I believe also echoes the myth of the original sin told in the Bible, in the book of Genesis. We have this earthly paradise where people of extraordinary beauty, almost perfection, wander around naked, oblivious about their bliss, about their privileges, until the very moment in which they suddenly open their eyes and notice everything, and that is the reason for why they commit their very first sin. That is the beginning of their downfall. So downfall begins with an act of noticing, of waking up from a state of childly obliviousness to their very own privileges, to their own virtues and youth and beauty. This is in fact the very same thing that happens with Dorian Gray, and similarly then with Adam and Eve, he also falls deeper and deeper into vice and sin until he becomes hedonistic and wretched. He dedicates his very life to experiencing bliss in all of its forms. And he can do that without paying the consequences as everyone else, because as time passes, he maintains his youth and beauty, whereas the picture is decaying instead. Towards the end of the story, however, Dorian Gray realizes that the world is worth nothing if you lose your soul, so he starts to reflect on his own sins and tries to change his way. And this is the reason for why he ultimately confronts his doppelganger, his evil version, by walking up the stairs and entering in the attic where he had hidden the picture that portrays him, a picture that in the meantime has become horrendous, showcasing an old, wretched man, and as soon as he sees himself, he sees what he has become, what his soul really looks like. He feels such a contempt for himself that he stabs the picture with a knife. As a result, he is found dead with a knife in his chest, and the picture is untamed, showing a young, virtuous man. Well, of course, this book is an extended metaphor which talks to the soul of every person, regardless of the circumstances. This is the great thing about classical literature of the best kind. Regardless of when it is read, where it is read, and by whom, we always find something relevant in it, regardless of the circumstances. If you think about it, it's truly fascinating to notice that this book has been read by English lords from the 19th century, as well as boomers from the 60s and zoomers as well. And all of them have found something relevant in it. Great literature, in fact, speaks to the souls of all people, and that is because we people haven't changed that much after all, and will never change, likely. This book, in fact, speaks to all humans, and especially to our civilization, I believe. We, people of the postmodern era, and especially of the West, I believe have fallen in love with their youth. We are afraid of getting old. We are afraid of the signs of time on our flesh. Plastic surgeries have never been so popular. People are trying whatever they can to look young. We soothe the pain and drive away fear with fleeting pleasures, afraid to confront the reality of our own impermanence and of the judgment of our conscience. Nihilism has spread like wildfire, negating the very existence of truth and of our own conscience, declaring that it doesn't really matter after all. We have forsaken our moral compass, declaring it doesn't even exist. Moral conscience, that is, in fact, our soul, that is, our picture. We are drunk in self-indulgence and afraid of true love, which requires a sacrifice. So people are not getting married, not making children anymore, because of course that requires giving away something from our own freedom, sacrificing the present for the future. But we love the present too much. In the end, deep in our soul, we know that summer won't last forever. Let's take a step back for a moment. Have you ever heard about the BTAE effect, the better than average effect, also known as the moral superiority bias? This is a well-documented human characteristic whereby people, all people, have the conviction of being superior than others, more intelligent, more fair, more just. In other words, everyone believes to be better than the others, which is understandable, let's say, from a human point of view, but it's also very cringe. Now, I don't know you, but I like to engage in interesting conversations with people, trying to make them reflect on who they are, what they want. And one of the things that I try to do whenever I feel like it is to just provoke people by asking them uncomfortable questions, trying to question their own moral superiority. In such circumstances, an answer that I have got pretty often is, yeah, I'm a good person, I don't need no moral compass. Now, I hope that I don't even have to explain why that is extremely embarrassing to say. It is as if I wanted to say, yeah, I'm a Sigma, I'm a Giga Chad. Even if, provided that is true, you aren't supposed to say that, because that is proof in itself that it's not true. In other words, everyone believes to be better than others, but that makes this very statement not only unrealistic, but obviously wrong. So, don't think to be good, because it's untrue. And I can prove that to you. Remember that time? Yes, I'm talking exactly about that time, that very moment, that instance when you broke your own rules, When you did something that you knew was wrong, but you enjoyed it. When you thought, yeah, no one will know. That sense of freedom, of power. Yes, I know exactly what you're thinking about. Every one of us has done something like that, even several, if not many times in our lives. This is proof that you are not good, as no one is. So close your eyes now. See the attic of your mind. Do you remember that picture that you closed there some time ago? That picture that you don't dare to look at because you are scared of what might look back at you. Don't be afraid to look at it. Go up those stairs, open that creaky door, and dare to stare in the face of the creature portrayed on that picture. Don't expect it to be very good looking, I would say. But don't be afraid to look at it. Why? Because only by confronting your dark side will you be able to recognize your own faults. Most people don't like to recognize their own shortcomings, not even to themselves. In fact, most will negate that they even did something like that. But this is not a good strategy in the long run. Why? Because if we don't reflect on our own mistakes, and we don't even recognize when we did wrong, we will not be able to improve. We will not be able to see where we missed and use that knowledge to our own advantage. Or, maybe even worse, we might commit the sin of Judas. That is, the sin of Dorian Gray. You know, something that very few people know about Judas, the apostle who betrayed Jesus, was that his sin, his greatest sin, was not even having betrayed the Son of God, as the Bible teaches, but instead it was not having asked forgiveness from God, having believed to have the right to judge himself, to condemn himself. In fact, he ultimately commits suicide. In other words, Judas was not able to forgive himself, to recognize his fault and amend his sin, to use this knowledge to change his life and improve and become a better person. Instead, he became disgusted with what he had become, with his own crime, and judged and condemned himself to the capital punishment of death. In fact, I believe that the ultimate failure of a human being is being condemned by his own self. Because, regardless of what people might say, almost all of us have a moral conscience. And that is a blessing. That is something we should be proud about, something that we should cherish. This is what differentiates us from animals. Animals aren't able to improve, to notice good and evil, to change how they behave. We can do that. We can do that by recognizing our faults, recognizing our sins, repenting of our own mistakes, and using this knowledge to our own advantage, to change life, to become better versions of ourselves and improving the world. Many people hope they don't have a moral conscience because they believe that this way they can achieve greater freedom. If they recognize that we have a difference between good and evil, they will feel constrained by this knowledge. And that is true, but it is a constraint that helps us to improve, to recognize our faults, and that is something that we should cherish. Instead, if we didn't have any moral conscience and wouldn't have to fear committing mistakes, we would literally behave like psychopaths, the only people who don't have a moral conscience. And that is definitely a moral condition, a psychological condition. I don't believe it's very beneficial for society or the individual himself. So, all in all, what we can learn from this book is that as much as we try to hide it, we all have a moral conscience. We all know deep in our soul the difference between good and evil. And given that, it's not a good strategy to just hide our own conscience in an attic. So, dear viewer, don't be afraid to walk up those stairs. Dare to look at the picture that you have hidden. See that grin on that face. dare to notice and use that knowledge to become the better version of yourself. And that's all that I wanted to say for today. Till next time, my friends.